So I've argued that the belief in God or the impression that there's some sort of supernatural agent evaluating our moral behaviors is not just simply an artifact or a byproduct or residue of other psychological abilities, but it actually served an adaptive function. It had some evolutionary significance for our ancestors in the deep ancestral past, in the deep evolutionary past. And the main difference between, and the only way to really understand this is to look at the major difference or the adaptive problem for human beings as a species. And to me, that problem is language. And most theorists that are talking about the evolution of language think about sort of the very positive aspects about the evolution of language. It allowed us to share our thoughts, communicate our feelings, to teach subsequent generations and therefore allow cultural innovations, the sort of cultural scaffolding model. But with the evolution of language also came the evolution of gossip. Gossip was a good thing on one hand because we could collect and gather the sort of salacious or prurient information about people that we would have some type of relationship with possibly and decide whether or not we want to invest in them as either reproductive partners or cooperative partners. If you find out, for example, that your future husband has a history or reputation of child abuse or cheating other people, well, you might want to think twice before engaging in any type of sort of long-term committed relationship to that individual. You actually have children with that person. So it was interesting because it was adaptive to be a gossip and gathering information about other people. But the problem was that other people all of a sudden were gathering information about us in terms of gossip. They could spread information about us, negative things potentially that they saw us doing, and tell people that weren't necessarily there when they saw it. So unlike every other species on the face of the earth, human beings have this adaptive problem of having to inhibit their otherwise selfish behaviors that could have been adaptive, that could have actually been good for them in the short term. But now that people saw it, they could tell person A that wasn't there, tell person B, tell person C, tell person D. 5 years down the road, it can come back to hurt us in terms of our reputation. So if God comes into the picture, because if we thought that somebody was watching us, when we were really tempted to do something, to cheat, then we would have perhaps thought twice about it if we were convinced that that God or our dead relative or whatever would somehow punish us either symbolically in the form of having some horrible disease or one of our children dying or losing our crops or something like that, or in the afterlife where we're punished eternally. If we thought and we were sincere in our conviction that God saw us and could punish us, we would think twice about doing that. And the illusion that there was an audience observing our behaviors would have been adaptive in the long term because it would have helped us inhibit our selfish behaviors that could have potentially been observed by an actual human being, another person, and communicated socially through this network of gossip. So in this sense, God is adaptive in the sense that he or she or it or whatever stopped us from doing things that we thought we could get away with, but we otherwise wouldn't because we were convinced that he or she or it was watching. It doesn't have to be real. God doesn't have to be real to have these dramatic effects on human social behavior. And we know this from all sorts of really interesting social psychological experiments that feeling watched actually does make you more pro-social and altruistic in your behavioral decision making, presumably because of the fear of punishment.